If you have spent any time on gardening videos this year, you have seen the claim. Bend a single copper wire into a spiral, push it into the soil next to your plants, and watch your crops grow twice as healthy. No fertilizer, no work, just a piece of wire and the invisible electricity in the air. It is called electroculture, and in 2026, it is everywhere. So I bought the copper, I built the antennas, and then I did something most of the videos selling this idea never do. I read the actual studies. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what the science says about the copper wire trick, why it spread so fast, and the 3 things that actually do double the life in your soil, which is what you really wanted in the first place. But first, where this whole idea came from, because the history is more interesting than the hype. The copper wire idea is not new. It goes back almost 300 years. In the 1740s, a French scientist named Jean-Antoine Nollet ran experiments applying electrical current to plants and reported that they grew faster. Through the 1800s and early 1900s, there was real scientific interest in what was then called electroculture, and there was a genuine observation behind it that confused everyone for decades. Gardeners noticed that plants often grew better after a thunderstorm. They were not imagining it. But the reason had nothing to do with copper. When lightning passes through the air, it splits nitrogen molecules and binds them into nitrate, a form of nitrogen that plants can actually absorb. That nitrate dissolves into the rain and feeds the soil. The storm was working like a free dose of nitrogen fertilizer falling from the sky. The electricity helped the plants, but only because it made food, not because the plants liked being electrified. By the way, a viewer named Earl in Kentucky sent me a message last month. 67 years old, retired engineer, 2 acres of clay so hard he could barely get a shovel in. He had tried the copper antennas for a full season after seeing them online. His honest report, he could not tell any difference between the beds with copper and the beds without. What did change his soil, he said, was the compost and the mulch he added at the same time. We will come back to why that matters. Anyway, so here is the question that actually counts. Does a copper wire stuck in the ground bring electricity to your soil and double your harvest? Before I go on, I want to stop for a moment and be honest with you, because a lot of channels will not be. I am not going to tell you a comforting story and then sell you a $50 copper kit. Here is what the controlled research found. In 2025, a team published a controlled experiment in the journal PLOS One. They grew kale, mustard greens, beets, and turnips, half of them with copper rods in the soil and half without. Everything else identical. The result: no consistent benefit to growth or yield from the copper. They went further and explained why. A passive copper wire sitting in soil produces almost no voltage. It is far too little to affect how a plant actually functions. Washington State University Extension, reviewing all the popular claims, put it even more plainly. A coiled copper wire in your garden does not bring meaningful electricity into the soil, and there is no reliable evidence it improves plant growth. One scientist there made a point that stuck with me. If a cheap piece of copper wire really doubled crop yields, the largest agricultural companies on Earth would have poured money into it decades ago. They have not, because it does not work. So why did it explode this year? 3 reasons, and none of them are that it works. First, it is cheap and it photographs beautifully. A handmade copper spiral in a vegetable bed looks ancient and wise, like a secret your grandmother knew. Second, it is sold as effortless. No digging, no compost, no patience, just pushing a wire. That is a very appealing promise and a very human one. And third, when people install copper antennas, they almost always do other things at the same time. They prepare the bed, they add compost, they water more carefully, they pay closer attention. Then the garden does better, and the wire gets the credit that the compost earned. That last one is the trap, and Earl in Kentucky fell into it before he sorted out what was really driving the change. Now the part that is actually worth your time. Because here's the thing. The desire underneath the copper trend is real, and it is right. You want soil that is genuinely alive, plants that resist pests on their own, harvests that get bigger every year without a shelf of chemical bottles. That is achievable. It is just not in a wire. It is in 3 things that decades of university research agree on completely. The first is organic matter. This is the single most powerful lever you have. The University of Maryland. Extension notes that most garden plants perform best when soil organic matter sits around 5 to 10%, and that the way you get there is compost, leaves, grass clippings, and cover crops worked into the top few inches. Organic matter is what holds water, feeds microbes, and slowly releases the nutrients your plants need. It is not glamorous. It is just the thing that works. The second is earthworms. You do not buy them, you invite them. Kansas State University Extension describes earthworms as one of the best living indicators of soil health. Their castings build stable soil structure, improve how water soaks in, and accelerate the release of nutrients plants can use. Colorado State University Extension adds the practical part. Worms need moisture and they need food, which means organic mulch on the surface and compost in the soil. Feed the worms and they do the tilling, the aeration, and half the fertilizing for free. Earl counted more worms in his beds by midsummer, and it was the mulch that brought them, not the copper. The third is structure, which simply means soil that water and roots can move through. Oregon State University Extension recommends working roughly half an inch to an inch of compost into the top 6 inches of soil and warns against repeated heavy tilling, which crushes the pore spaces and kills the very worms you're trying to keep. Good structure is what lets a root system actually spread, and it is built by organic matter and worms over time, not by any single product. Now, I have put together a free companion guide for this video, and I want to be straight about what is in it, because it is the part I could not fit into the time I have here. The exact compost to soil ratios for clay, sandy, and loam gardens, measured per square meter, so you're not guessing. A simple month-by-month calendar for building organic matter from spring through fall, and a short troubleshooting list for the most common reason home gardens underperform, which is almost never a missing copper wire. The first link in the description takes you to it. The pinned comment has it as well. I want to be fair to the copper because fairness matters. There is real and serious science on applied electrical fields in agriculture, but the voltages that show any effect are far higher than anything a passive wire in your backyard can produce. The copper spiral in a garden bed is not that. If you have already built one and you enjoy it, there is no harm in leaving it in. It will not hurt your plants. It simply will not do the work the videos promised. Your compost will. So here's where this leaves you. You can spend this weekend bending copper and hoping the air does something. Or you can spend it doing the 3 things that every agricultural research station on the planet already agrees on. Add organic matter, feed the worms, protect your soil structure. Do those, and a year from now you'll be standing in a garden that genuinely produces more than it did, the way Earl's finally did once he stopped crediting the wire and started crediting the compost. That is not a secret anyone is hiding from you. It is just quieter than a viral trend, and it has the one thing the copper wire never had: evidence. If you want the kind of gardening that is built on what actually works instead of what photographs, well, that is what this channel is for. The free guide is in the first link and the pinned comment. Subscribe, and let's grow real soil together.